Good afternoon, everyone. You are in the zone. Rich Sutter, Pete Coles. What a difference a week makes, Pete. Last week we were in here in short pants. Weather was gorgeous, and New England just gave you the old turnaround. Right now it's a little bit of snow last night, a little bit of frost on the pumpkin in different areas. Uh, but we're in Feed 'em Fish right off the bat, Pete. We got a lot to cover today. We got a lot to do. And right now, in the zone is flying their flags at half mast, and we are in a period of mourning for the show a little bit. I'm using the red Sharpie today as my pacifier, and we are reflecting on the 83-year life of Robert Montgomery Knight, one of the all-time greatest basketball coaches of all time, anywhere. And wanted to start off this segment in just a brief moment to talk about his career. Obviously, a somewhat controversial figure. You'd have to throw that out there at first. But I think when they say controversial, I prefer, in referring to Coach Knight, to refer to him as misunderstood. And not everybody in life is going to get you, but very few people that I have ever met in my life, and I met Coach Knight, have ever had the courage to walk the path they wanted to walk, to be the type of person that they wanted to be, and to do what was, in his words, is, I always thought I could do what was right. And to me, as a person, as a coach, that always resonated with me. And as we dig in to all of what we have with Coach Knight, and then we hold it in juxtaposition to some of the other accomplishments that have been out there, I think you really get a sense of the greatness of his coaching ability as we start to examine it. All right? So, 3 different coaching stops for Coach Knight. He started off at Army at West Point. He went from Army to Indiana, where he spent the majority of his career, and the most people that will know Coach Knight will remember him and revere him from his great times at Indiana, the program that he built at Indiana, but also in turning Indiana into an absolute basketball factory or a basketball state. The state of Indiana is a basketball state. You've seen the movie Hoosiers. You've seen the Indiana way that they go through their finals and into the state tournaments and all that other stuff. Believe me, it's exciting. It's unbelievable. I've been out in Bloomington, Indiana for a Bobby Knight game at different occasions of my life, and it was something to see. It was really something to see. I'm going to throw out a couple of things for our audience, let you make some determinations on Coach Knight. Controversy stuff, we don't need to touch on some of that stuff. I mean, when he threw the chair, I thought that was one of the greatest moments in basketball history. I really did. I really, really thought that, obviously it's not the right thing to do always. But at that moment, at that time, it really was a memorable thing to do. And sometimes memorable, it crosses the line sometimes with right, obviously. And he said he always thought he tried to do what was right. And in his mind, obviously, what was going on during that game wasn't right. And he had the answer to it, which was, I'm going to throw this chair. And you can go at the answer, you can go at his response to it. But again, people in this country for a very, very long time have always admired people that stood up for what was right. And I think if there's anything you can say about Coach Knight, is one of the greatest things that resonated with me as a young coach was he stood up for what was right, at least in his mind, in his attempt, in his life. We all only get that one life. In what he had in his 83 years, I think, you have to measure it all in totality. Pete, we're going to leave his name out of it, but Pete alluded today to somebody going on and hammering Coach Knight. He's one of the meanest people that he's ever met. It's a local guy here, and I get that. I get that. But to me also, and I think this has been lost a little bit. There's a lot of freedom out there to say whatever you want these days, but something's been lost. And there's a part of it about speaking ill of people who have passed away, speaking ill of the dead, because they can no longer defend themselves. And so I really always found that to be a little off-putting when people attack people who, especially somebody who just recently passed away, their family is in mourning. And is it really, really necessary right this moment to take a public forum to go and try and slay the guy to make yourself look good? That bothers me a little bit, because a lot of times the people that are criticizing the people who've passed away are not even in the same league or in the same category as that person. All right, so let's run through it a little bit, Pete. He had 20 wins in a season, which is a benchmark for a coach, 29 times.
Wow.
29 20-win seasons. Wow. He had an Olympic gold medal as the coach. He had an Olympic gold medal. And let's rewind the clock a little bit to when he was selecting the team. 2 players, everybody, if I bring it up now, is going to remember it, but 2 players that Bobby Knight cut from the Olympic team, Charles Barkley and John Stockton. Cut them both from the Olympic trials. So take that for what it is. I'm not sure the reasoning on that. Maybe, he had his own reasons for that. But the Olympic gold medal came home with him. 3 national titles at Indiana. I've said this on a number of occasions on our show. The team that I saw play in Madison Square Garden, and I want to say it was 1976, the team that won the national title, they won undefeated and won the whole thing. That team is probably one of the best college basketball teams I've ever seen. They were highly talented, but they played with a discipline and one that was emblematic of Coach Knight's teams. And when you get a great team to play with that type of chemistry, discipline, and esprit de corps, so to speak, coming out of Army and using some of that principles that he had learned in the Army, just kind of seeing those 2 things in their position to each other, just really, really something that signifies his career. He's 6th on the all-time wins of coaches. And the thing that a lot of our coaches know, there was never an NCAA violation on Coach Knight's doorstep.
That's what I heard that was the
never
big thing.
An NCAA violation on Coach Knight's doorstep. And his graduation rate was absolutely unbelievable. His graduation rate of his players was absolutely unbelievable. Anybody who wants to take a deep dive on what truly, truly made the gentleman tick can look at Landon Turner, one of his former players who was seriously injured in a car wreck, seriously hurt for life, never to be the same again, survived the car accident, fortunately, but for the rest of his life, lost certain facilities. And go back and look at what Bob Knight did for Landon Turner in his life, and you'll see a whole completely different picture of the person that they saw on the sidelines throwing the chair or yelling at the official. A deeply, deeply human guy when it came to that level. If you needed something from Bob Knight and he could give it to you, you could ask him and he'd get it for you. What he did with Landon Turner was nothing short of sainthood. Okay? Really, really strong integrity about his program. And again, his impact in the state of Indiana is absolutely unquestionable. The state of Indiana is Bobby Knight basketball. The state of Indiana reflects the integrity and the esprit de corps and everything that Coach Knight's teams were made of. That's what resonates in Indiana to this day and will resonate very, very long after his time. The head coach at Indiana now, Mike Woodson, is one of former players. Obviously, when they had the opportunity or when they wanted to decide to split from Coach Knight at Indiana after a number of different things went down, there was a lot of frost between Coach Knight and the Indiana people, and it wasn't that he was diminished, but it was almost like he was gone from the state, and it was such an absolute big part of the state that over time, towards the end, that did thaw and that did frost a little bit. So I think that part of it was really, really cool. Forgiveness is the biggest gift that we have as humans. You don't just give it to the people that you're forgiving, but you give it to yourself. And that's why it has that really cool double-edged sword. So I think at the end, some of his players were pivotal in that, in trying to make it, to bring Coach Knight back, because obviously there was some bitter feelings there on both sides, possibly. But when I went to Indiana, when I was a young coach, I got sent to Indiana to scout. We were going to play Kent State, an old, very revered coach, Jim McDonald. And back in the day, you could scout in person. And so off I go on my airplane. I get out there, I get my rent-a-car, I pick it up, boom. And when you scouted a game as a college scout, usually depending on where you went, you would get a seat that was, either right at the table or you were courtside. You were very, very close. You had the best seat in the house, is what I'm trying to tell you. So I walk in, and I'm about 25 to 30 minutes early so I can get set up, go to the press room, grab all of the materials that I'm going to grab for the game, get everything I can get. Because when you're scouting a game, a lot of times, if you're smart about it, you can get the press to do half your job, because all of the statistics, all of the stuff they would accumulate in the sports information offices would be disseminated to the other press who showed up.
Yep.
And if I went in there as a scout, I went through the whole press line, picked up every single packet, and walked out of there with a folder not only on Indiana's team, but also on the team that I was scouting. So I go there. Indiana treated me like I was Bobby Knight while I was there. The scout, I was in the front row, right at the table, beautiful spot, and I walk in, and the whole place is dressed in red. There's not one person that doesn't have one of those Bobby Knight red sweaters on, or everybody, the women are dressed in red dresses. I mean, everybody is wearing red. And now they're warming up, they're doing their thing, and I'm just sitting there in awe of this whole thing. This is like Big Ten basketball. There's playing Kent State, but the building's completely sold out. It's a game where it's a non-league game, but there's some rivalry action in there. There's a little bit of taste, and it's a Bobby Knight coach basketball game. So the refs come out, everybody's out, but he don't come out till a little bit later. And then he walks out, and it's like, a Hollywood superstar came out of the locker room. There was such reverence, such adoration. The fans there loved him. The way that they reacted to him and responded to him was as if they knew him, as if he was a family member of theirs. And that's an unbelievable gift of a coach, when you can draw that kind of attraction to people that you don't even know.
It's probably like The Rock walking out of WrestleMania or something.
Yeah, there's 18,000 people there.
Yeah.
And every single one of them is locked in. And he doesn't know any of them, but they all know him. And that's something. We just had a little bit of scuffle with two young coaches. People can go look it up. I'm not going to waste our time getting into it. Maybe later in the show. Bryant and Fairfield just both had their coaches step out right before the beginning of the season, both for different reasons. But, again, their programs are now in turmoil. Everything's gone out and awry. And you look at a situation where you have a Bobby Knight, the integrity of it all, that's what the young coaches should look to. Because in that business, with the profile that they have, where the microscope is on, even Bobby Knight at the end of it got caught under that microscope. And so all of these young coaches, when you get a job like this and you're in a position that most people would really, really do a lot to get into if they could, you have to watch yourself and you have to check yourself. You have to make sure that your behavior is 100% above the pale, or otherwise you will get gotten. I'm saying it right now. You will get got. And so I say this to young coaches all the time. If you value your career, if you enjoy what you're doing and love what you're doing, you need to have that be reflected in the way that you talk to people on the line of the delicatessen, because somebody might just pull out their phone and start recording you. And at the end of the day, I don't think that's 100% fair. But one thing it does is it also kind of enforces human behavior, in that you better be nice now. You better not
Everybody's
be.
got a cell
You better
phone.
not be smoking people on the line, because they didn't bring your bacon, egg, and cheese fast enough, And a lot of that went down. So there's always good and bad in just about everything. But with these young coaches that just went up in smoke, they spent their entire career trying to get where they were and just burned it up like that. That's why you get a guy who has 29 times he had 20 winning seasons. Because there was a longevity there, and that's why he's one of the greats and will go down as one of the greats. But again, zero NCAA violations, that resonates with me. Because if you look at some of the people that are in the Hall of Fame down in Springfield right now, they were NIL long before the NIL got here. There was all sorts of violations, all sorts of different stuff associated with their program, time and time again. And you have a gentleman like Coach Knight, and so now we have to bell curve this thing. Everybody else was doing this. He wasn't. And he was able to win 3 national titles, have his team relevant the entire time, and win. I mean, when he went out to Texas Tech, they won 20 games 5 of the years he was there. So just a great coach. I'll go as far as to say he was a great man because of the magnitude of what he did. Was he misunderstood? Yeah. Was he complicated? Absolutely. Great people often are complicated, and that's something that we've seemed to lost our perspective on in this country as well too. People that are in positions of power, people that are in positions of extreme influence often have bad days too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you went back and took my worst day and you put it on television, I don't know how good it would look. So it's where the world we are right now. But again, rest in peace, Coach Knight. You're up there right now with the whistle, and your influence is profound. The influence of the Knight impact on college basketball, absolutely profound. Unfortunately, and I want to say this, it wasn't profound enough, because nothing really good can exist in the hands of fearful men. And when you have a group of men, 9 of them are sitting in the room, one of them has the dignity, the courage to stand up and do things the right way, Robert Montgomery Knight. And then you have the other 9 guys go the other way. The other 9 guys are fearful of that one guy, and so they go the other way. And that's what starts the whole paradigm of cheating, of breaking rules, and doing anything you can in order to get a player. Somehow that became acceptable in our business. And somehow people were able to brush that off and deflect that as if it doesn't matter in your whole coaching record, as if vacating Final Fours doesn't matter when you're compared to Bobby Knight. This is what happens now with the passing of this great man. You get now the contrast to all the other people that are out in his business and look at it and say, it didn't have to go that way because of the example of Bobby Knight and others who didn't go that way. And so that's the measurement stick for me. That's the measurement tool for me. It didn't have to go that way. You were afraid, and you took it that way, and that became the rule, and that became the norm. And it goes to show you, just because everybody's doing something doesn't make it right. Just because everybody's doing something doesn't mean it's the important thing to do. That's why Bobby Knight's important, because of his integrity, and because he was able to do it and do it without the other stuff that went along with it, that disgraces your program, that devalues you as a person and a coach, and which turns you into something. You turned yourself out for a group of people that don't even know you. You turned yourself out and your family out for a group of people that don't even recognize you. Choose wisely, you young coaches. Choose wisely. Read about Bobby Knight. Listen to Bobby Knight. You can leave out the throwing chairs. You can leave out all the other stuff, but the integrity piece is what stands for me. And when you look at where all the other guys went, and this guy had the courage and the dignity to stand there and not go that way and succeed with 3 national titles, it says to me, that's a life worth lived. That's a life of value. That's a life of meaning. Rest in peace, Coach Knight. Okay, on we go, Pete. On we go. As anticipated, I know locally the Husky fans are hurting right now. The Huskies are howling because Cooper Flagg put on the Ducat. Cooper Flagg, the #1 player in the class of 2024. He's like part Christian Laettner, part Larry Bird. He's 6'10". He can run. He can jump. He can dunk. If he wants to come down in the summer, I'll work with him on his shooting because he's got a little bit of a flaw with his shooting right now. And I'll give him some free advice on his shooting. But he's an NBA. NBA can't miss if everything goes right. He's going to enroll at Duke. And this is what we've been talking about on this show for a while, is when Duke goes hyperspace, when their program takes off and disappears from all of the other programs that are out there. Sorry, Tar Heel fans. I'm sorry, Kentucky fans. Although Kentucky has made some great inroads recently, Duke right now is the Duke. They are the royalty of college basketball as far as recruiting is going. Their NIL game is top-notch from what I hear, and they got a young coaching staff that's out there aggressively recruiting, going 1, 2, 3, 4 every single year. So Cooper Flagg is also the thing that creates more things. Who else wants to play with him now? He's 6'10". He's a great player. Do guards want to go to Duke now? The best guards? Of course they do. Do the best forwards want to go there? Yeah, let's win a national title. Let's get there together. They all meet and they all see each other on the AAU circuit too. It's a very, very small combine of that top 100 players that everybody chases, because those top 100 players can add something of value to your program that the others just can't add. And one of the things Cooper Flagg is going to bring is notoriety along with his game. Not only is he going to be a really good Duke player, fit in well in their system, and represent their program, I think, very, very well, I think also he's going to want and bring other players with him. And so let's just look at what's gone on there first. So they have #1 now, Cooper Flagg. They already had #8, Isaiah Evans. They also had #22, Con Nepal. They have #45, Darren Harris, and Darren Harris is very, very good. I'm not sure about him at 45. He's very good. Comes out of a program in Virginia, Pope Pius. Boy, they've been producing some great players. The DMV area down in that area is a really, really good basketball area. They've been producing some great players over time. Now, those players are already locked in. They're signed, in addition to all the other great players that they have. Now, I'm not sure what their scholarship situation is as far as their numbers. And again, for them, it's always tentative because they probably don't know up until maybe February if some of their current players will return or turn pro. And so for them, it's always a little bit of a negotiation. You have your seniors, obviously they're departing, but they also have freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who might turn pro. They also got hit with the transfer bug, tiny, tiny little bit, which doesn't happen to them very often. But they're still involved with #19, Pat Nabongo, who would make this class ridiculous. You have Dylan Harper, who's like second or third in most people's ratings. Most people are pushing Dylan Harper to go to Rutgers because they signed Asarius Bailey as well, and that would give Rutgers like 2 of the top 5 players in the country. I don't think that's ever happened before. So congratulations to Coach Peichel if they can close that out. But Dylan Harper's also considering Duke. And if they were to get in with Dylan Harper and get serious with that, man, that's going to just it's going to just change things in a way that I don't think people understand. They're also in with the #5 player, VJ Edgecombe, out of New York, who's a terrific guard, and Cooper Flagg and him visited together. And so as we enter into this early period, that's a name I would keep an eye on, is VJ Edgecombe, because he was on a visit with Flagg. And usually when Duke brings in players at a certain time, you have these fall visits, and they're set up either to go around a couple of different things. #1, the fall visit can be set up to go around homecoming. It can be set up to go around Parents' Weekend. It can be set up to go around Alumni Weekend, which brings sometimes their former players back to the campus. And so you also set it up around, a lot of times, football games. the home football games, the great environment of the home football games. I remember recruiting a young man by the name of O'Donnell Foyle at Colgate, and every minute of that day up until November, I was chewing my fingernails down to the bone because we were in with Syracuse, we were in with Duke, we were in with North Carolina, and they just can really step things up in the recruiting stuff when they want to. So O'Donnell went to the Duke. No, it wasn't Duke. It was Syracuse, and I might have been playing Duke, but he went to a football game while he was on campus, and the entire student body jumped up and started chanting his name. and you're sitting there, and, in the Dome, it's one of the greatest places, sports venues in all of the country, and 15,000 people just stand up and start chanting your name, and it was just amazing.
That'll give you the warm fuzzies.
That it was happening, We promised them lifetime toothpaste at Colgate, and that's why we won. So just wanted to get into a little bit of what's going on in the NBA. The Duke thing is we'll keep an eye on that. And again, we have really, really loved college basketball on this show. Right now, we've kind of been dipping into the NBA a little bit harder than college basketball because there's nothing really happening much in college basketball other than these kind of blips that have been occurring. But November 6th, next week, is the tip. And so we'll have a bunch of games going off. We'll have 12-16 in this area. We have Bonaventure and UMass against West Virginia and Florida Atlantic. Great doubleheader down in the MGM. I would expect we'll get a great crowd for that. But right now I want to dip into the NBA a little bit just to talk about what's happening there. I think we're right outside of Boston here with our show. And so people should be excited about the start the Celtics are having. They're 4-0. And I don't remember a time when I've heard a number like this, and it's part and parcel. I think the NBA needs to address this a little bit, okay? They don't play any defense in this league.
Correct.
And I don't know if defense was taken out or defense was homicided, where they just killed it. And they said, don't do this and don't do that. And because if I was the coach of some of these teams that are what they call small market teams that have really no chance to win almost every single night they go out, you'd want to mix it up as a coach. You'd want to try some stuff to give your team a little bit of an edge, a little bit of an advantage. So you might press a little bit with a 24-second clock. Does the NBA allow full court press? I don't know. You might throw the zone every once in a while. You're seeing this with teams a little bit more, especially they talk about load management, where they're resting their players. Playing zone might help a little bit too because it's not as extenuating on your lower extremities, on your body. As playing man-to-man is. You can kind of hang out. They call it zone for a reason because you can kind of hang out in an area and play an area rather than play a man. And so I'm surprised you don't see more of that. I think it's probably very discouraged. I think if you were a coach and went in there and tried a college format, I don't know that your players would like it either too much because it's a lot over the course of all those games. But try something. Because some of these teams just go out as sacrificial lambs every night, and maybe that's part of it too. Maybe that's what they're supposed to be doing. The 76ers, we're just going to jump in here with our hard to be hardened segment as well. They did it, Pete. The 76ers finally traded James Harden. They traded him to the Clippers, LA Clippers. People all over the place going, why are the Clippers doing this? I'll tell you why in a minute. But this is the Philadelphia side. Obviously, they go back to him and Daryl Morey, very public spat. Obviously, James was trying to push the envelope and probably get out of town because when you call your general manager a liar, that's basically insubordination, and there's not much left for the team to do than to get you out of town. So now you got to find the right place, and you got to find the right compensation. So what were teams willing to give up to have James Harden come onto their team? That's where now, because he degraded the whole situation, he became less valuable to the 76ers as well.
Yep.
And he wasn't tradable or as tradable as he might have been if he had just not called Daryl Morey a liar. Now, maybe Daryl Morey did lie, okay? But you're biting off your nose to spite your face. It's not good policy. Why turn on yourself? So What's happened, though, and we'll talk about the Clippers in 1 second. What's happened to me is it looks like the 76ers are back having fun. It looks to me like the 76ers say, okay, now this is beyond us. They're getting great production out of Joel Embiid, who's their big MVP center, getting great production out of him this year. He'll have another MVP-type season. But they're also now Tyrese Maxey has stepped up and had monster games without Harden in the lineup. That frees up the ball more when Harden isn't in the lineup. Some people are going to be beneficiary of that. There's other players that are going to be beneficiary. I was a little surprised that the 76ers included P.J. Tucker in the deal because what they took back was predominantly draft picks to try and build the future around a pretty young center, Joel Embiid. So a good strategy, I think, but also risky. Risky because of the time and the gap. How fast can you get those young players to mature and be ready to jump into NBA center stage? They can play in the NBA for sure, but are you talking about center stage where you're going to try and bring a team to the Eastern Conference Finals and beat the Celtics or the Heat? That's what we're talking about.
Is that the Danny Ainge philosophy? Get as many picks as you can get?
I think that's what they're doing, but in this group, I think it's risky because you might go past Embiid's usefulness by the time those guys get ready. I would have liked to have seen them in this pick with Harden because I don't think the Clippers we're not going to blow up our team to bring this guy in. So you're dealing with a very hard market, I would assume. And so now you got the Clippers who say, okay, we take them, but then they're giving up draft picks because they're in the frame of we can try and win right now. We can try and win right now. Now, what does their team look like right now? The Clippers at the point guard have Russell Westbrook, and that is an adventure, to say the least. He's mercurial, as a point guard. Very talented, very, very talented, but he's mercurial. So now you have Harden, who will slide in next to him, and then you have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two of the best offensive players in the game. I don't know how that all fits. I don't know how all that chemistry works. But, hey, right now, they got a pretty good four. That seems to be the NBA new set. Let's try and get a good four. If you compare the four that the Celtics have, with Holiday, and you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and now Porzingis, that's a good four. So can you win with a good four? As opposed to having some depth? Possibly. But there's also some teams out west that are doing some good stuff too. Nuggets have not really come out with that kind of championship hangover. They've come out very strong, very, very solid in their play. They've looked very, very good to me. That's a tribute to their team, their organization, but also to their coaching staff. Michael Malone's done a really good job with this team. He grew up in the game. They did a really nice tribute to his dad the other night on ESPN. But the Mavericks, Kyrie and Luka's just going crazy. Luka is off the charts right now as far as he right now, if you declared an MVP, you're going to say Luka's the guy. So let's go into the NBA scoreboard a little bit and just give you an idea of what's happening. It's very early on, but there's some teams out there that are doing some good stuff. Golden State's trying to hold it together. They're doing some chemistry, adding some new players, and you have, when you have Steph Curry, and you can really do a lot of things around that. But they're trying to work some things out. They have some nice pieces out in the West. The Lakers have looked terrific. I don't know if it's early season, but LeBron James is wow. That's all I can say about LeBron James. And I hammered Anthony Davis last week on the show. A lot of people hammered Anthony Davis last week on the show, on their respective shows. He responded this week with two amazing games this week where just him and LeBron were just dominant. And if they can hold that together, I think they're going to be good. I'm not sure that they heard In the Zone all the way out in Los Angeles, but I was screaming loud enough last week that they might have when we said, move him to the point. Move him to the point guard. Put the ball in LeBron James's hands. He's one of the great players of all time. He's one of the best decision makers, and he'll make other players on your team better. If you're going to try and get the ball to him in position after running him off screens and doing all this other stuff, you're going to be late. Give him the ball, let him run the one, and both him and Davis have logged pretty significant minutes. So the leaderboard looks like this. Leading scorer right now, Luka Doncic. They have several guys. This is new because defense has been eliminated in the NBA officially. Several guys that average over 30 points a game now. You'd never see that in the past. Averaging 30 points a game over the course of an NBA season, that's unheard of. You don't see that much. Now, Wilt Chamberlain and some of the great players obviously obliterated that. But averaging 30 points a game, I don't know. I don't know if Kobe Bryant ever averaged 30 points a game. I'd have to look that up. But right now you have Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So you got the Mavs and the Cavs in the 1 and 2 spot. Donovan Mitchell lives in obscurity. He's one of the best players in the NBA. Hardly anybody knows his name. He's a New Yorker. I like him. He's terrific. He had 70 points in a game last year. De'Aaron Fox. Keep that name on your speed dial, folks. That young man, another one of John Calipari's Wildcats, is terrific. He's having an unbelievable season. He's averaging 30 points a game right now, too. Now, can he maintain and keep that going throughout the course of the year? Let's see. But he's off to a terrific start. The Kings are not, however. The Kings are not off to a terrific start. I thought they'd be a little bit better. But the West is the West. They got royalty out there, and that royalty, it takes a lot to knock them off that throne. So you're looking at the Warriors are royalty, the Lakers are royalty, and right now you're going to have a scramble to see who the best team in California is. The Clippers have upgraded. The Warriors are solid. The Lakers are making their move. You know, you got a couple of things going on out there. I think the Kings are going to wind up being in fourth place if they don't get going soon. Steph Curry in the 4 spot, and Joel Embiid is in the 5 spot as far as scoring right now. And every single one of those guys is averaging over 30 points a game. They have 5 players in the league right now averaging between 33 and 31 points. Now, if you want to look at this from a coaching perspective, if you look at all of that, who's the most efficient scorer? And I would say it's Steph, because he takes far less shots than some of these other players are taking. He's averaging 18 attempts a game, and Doncic and Mitchell both over 22, 23 shots a game. So Steph being very efficient, the greatest shooter in the game.
He's like an assassin.
Ever. He's like an assassin, is right. He's one shot, one kill.
Yep.
And if you watch some of his YouTube stuff where he's just out there shooting pregame and doing some other stuff, and the way he just shoots the ball, I mean, he just shoots 3-pointers and doesn't miss for like length of time. Boom, boom, boom. And there's nobody else that is in that category as far as great shooter. You see him throwing the ball way up in the air, 30 feet in the air, the ball goes in. He shoots from half court, the ball goes in. He just has something going on there that other people don't got. Rebounding. The big man, Domantas Sabonis from the Kings. The Kings are represented well here in the standings, but they're struggling right now. DeAndre Ayton, my guy, I like this guy. Traded by Phoenix Suns. I thought that was, I think this is a young man. He's very young. He's very fluid at 6'10". He can do some stuff. And if you let him touch the ball more, he'll do better stuff scoring as well. But he's second in rebounding right now. Always liked DeAndre Ayton, even back to when he was at Arizona. This young man is the surprise right now of the NBA. Jalen Duren. He was a top 25 player years ago, wound up going to Memphis, playing out there for Penny Hardaway, and didn't really have a great first year at Memphis. He was okay. I watched him, and I said, if I was an NBA guy, I might want to stay away from him a little bit, because it just didn't resonate at Memphis. You would think he would dominate, and you would think that they would have had an unbelievable year while he was there. Didn't work. But now he's been in the NBA a bit, and boy, he is putting up some numbers, double-doubles all over the place. He's with the Detroit Pistons, and he is really, really playing at a high level. Jalen Duren, another obscurity guy. Anthony Davis, he's doing it. He's scoring. He's rebounding. He's leading the league, I think, in block shots as well. So I hope he can stay healthy. When he's healthy, he's one of the greats in the game. Mega talented, no question. But I think just from what I see from him, I would venture to say that his physical injuries have been significant over the years. But I would say if you ever sat down with Anthony Davis, I would say the mental part of it gets to him sometimes too, where it just crushes him. You know, the pressure and everything that goes with it. You can see some of these young athletes when they're out there, the young tennis player, having a tough time in press conferences. When you're a tennis player, you're out there by yourself. When you're a basketball player, you don't play well. Four guys can come up and go, don't worry, you'll get it back. You got it. When you're out there golfing, tennis, any of those individual sports, the pressure is magnified. The pressure is much, much greater. And when you have situations here emotionally, you have to work with your players all the time about emotional quotient, all the time, just to kind of keep in the moment and remain in that moment. It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Rudy Gobert going out as the fifth rebounder. All right, he's having a pretty good year, Rudy. All right, he got moved from Utah, and he's found new life. Found new life. Now, this assisting has knocked me off, because this gentleman's known as a scorer. Tyrese Halliburton out of Iowa State. Always liked this young man. Told people they should draft him. He's got good size. Shoots the ball very, very well. He's averaging good points, but he's leading the NBA in assists right now. If he keeps that up, you would have to have him in some NBA conversations as player of the year if this continues, because right now he's struggling with his team a little bit, but he is playing at an unbelievably high level. And nobody knows who the guy is. Tyrese Halliburton, put his name down. Jalen Duren, put his name down. De'Aaron Fox, put his name down. There's some great young players in the lower confines of the NBA here ready to explode, ready to move up. So you've also got Trae Young from the Atlanta Hawks, second in assists. Luka, third in assists. So back in the day, you had a gentleman by the name of Nate Tiny Archibald. I believe he was the last player to lead the NBA in scoring and assists. Right now, you have the best opportunity for that to occur again with Doncic. He might do it. He passes the ball so beautifully. He's a great shooter, great scorer, and right now he looks like he's playing like he wants to get his team advanced, and he feels like the Joker last year from Denver dominated. They're so similar, it's not even funny. The type of player they are, the type of game that they have, they're very, very similar. But for him to be third right now and very, very close with the assists, pretty good. Schrader and Chris Paul finish out. Dennis Schrader, the Lakers traded him. I don't know why. He was a pretty good player. The Lakers traded him, and I think they could use him right now. So I think this was interesting for me as a coach also. Steph Curry leads the league in most three-pointers made. Greatest shooter of all time. How many do you think he makes a game, Pete?
8.
8. That's what I thought. About 24 of his points would be from that range. He makes about 5.6, under 6, and nobody makes more than him. Nobody in the NBA, as many threes as they shoot, gets as many as 6 made threes in a game. Now, that's 18 points. If you can come up with that every single night, that's a good start.
Sure,
Get some free throws, a couple of basket-hanging layups, and there's your 30.
Yep.
But 5.6. 5.6.
See, I would have thought I would have been higher.
Me too, especially with him.
Yeah.
And there's guys right on his tail. This young man Brooks is 5.0. Luka Doncic, 4.8. He made a bomb the other night, too. That was an end of game. He passed off, threw the ball to Kyrie Irving in the corner, who wasn't having a great game. Kyrie nailed a huge, huge three. And then the next time down, instead of moving it, he just grabs it with a guy hanging all over him and nails a three. That was unbelievable. And then you have Paul George from the Clippers, one of the great all-time scorers in the game right now. Kawhi looked good the other night. I got to see them play last night. Harden was on the bench, not in the lineup, but they played last night, and they have talent. They have a talented team. Most blocks, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis right now is leading in blocks, and that means he's getting up and down the floor, getting off his feet, and playing good defense, helping out when somebody gets beat. That's what you really need big men for, is when some of your players get beat off the dribble. And then the defense gets penetrated, and the guy goes to the rim. That's when you got to have that big guy. Joel Embiid, He's second. Here's one for you, Pete. Chet Holmgren is third. Third with 2.6 blocks. Okay. And then you got Jaren Jackson. And my guy, I love this guy. And here's another guy that's in Toronto, in obscurity. Told everybody to draft this guy, and they finally did listen because he was taken in the top 3. But Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes is about 6'6", long arms, but he's averaging 2.4 blocks a game at like the guard spot. And if you look at his numbers right now,
Seriously?
at the guard spot, yeah,
Wow.
he's a 2 guard maybe, a little bit, but that's coming from a guard spot. His arms are so long, he can almost put the ball in the basket without leaving the floor. He's really lengthy, and he has great timing. And this is a young man. I watched him play in college. He's only 1 year for Florida State, but with me, it's a vibe, it's a feel, I'm looking at him, and yeah, this guy's got it all. And right now, up in Toronto, he's putting up significant numbers, averaging a double-double. So when In the Zone tells you about somebody, we're not just blowing smoke. We're not just trying to go, make it through the hour. When we tell you about somebody, it means it's visual. It means it's a gut feeling. It means I've watched this game for over 50 years, and when I watch somebody on layup line, I can tell you if they're any good. This guy's really good. Okay, steals. Who was on the Celtics last year that's not on the Celtics this year? Marcus Smart, leading the NBA in steals. He was always great at that. Lives in the passing lanes, and it takes a lot of energy to do that. Donovan Mitchell, he's smart because he wants to score the basketball. He wants to be in the top scorers in the NBA. Obviously, he's a great scorer of the ball. But if you play defense and get 2.8 steals, that gives you a lot more opportunities to get easy baskets as well. And so Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I watched them the other night. I'm a little concerned about them. Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought they would be off to a much better start. Their schedule's been a little rough, a little bumpy, but I watched them play. Something about what's going on there doesn't sit well with me. I don't know. I look at a game when I see a guard-dominated team like they have. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is doing great things out there. Another Kentucky Wildcat. When I look at the way that operates, though, it just doesn't look right to me. And so maybe that's my own bias there. But I watched them the other night, and they just don't have a lot of fluidity to their offense. They really don't. Paul George and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope clear it out. So the Celtics the other night, I just wanted to pick up on that. And again, we talk about defense, but they scored 155 points the other night. 155 points.
I heard it was a video game number.
They are an offensive juggernaut right now. But again, you got to go back to there's 2 things at play here, folks. A, the bifurcated look of the NBA. The haves and the have-nots is growing. It's getting bigger. And you're going to see more of these games where a team hangs 155 points on a team that's basically, virtually helpless to do anything about it. That's what the NBA future is going to look like. I don't know how that's going to roll out for all those TV executives either, because ain't nobody going to watch a game when a team's down 50 points. Don't matter if you're the most diehard Celtic fan of all time, you better be. You better be a really diehard guy, because if you're going to sit there and watch that game, where they're down all those different points,
Sure.
I just don't see it. Okay, so tonight in the NBA, a couple of good games. I was a little surprised that Wembanyama wasn't on the block shot totals in the top 5. I'm sure he's up there somewhere, but I just was a little surprised by that. He has had a very good start, in my opinion. He's just phenomenal in some of the things that he can do. Talk about being able to dunk the ball with almost not leaving the floor. He doesn't really have to jump to dunk. Tiny little bit getting off the floor, but he can dunk a basketball that way. That makes me think maybe he could stay healthier, because they get hurt a lot of times leaving their feet, doing different stuff, landing and all those other things. It's the landings more than anything with the high-profile players. You got a lot of miles on your body, and now you're going to jump all the way up in the air, dunk a basketball, and then land from 10 feet in the air, your legs are 5 feet in the air, and then you're coming down with great force, with tremendous power coming down onto your extremities, and that's where you get some of the injuries. I think we talked about that when I said if I was an NBA agent, I would tell my guys, don't dunk. Don't ever dunk, because we want to keep you healthy. You know, some of these guys love going up there, and it's great. The fans love it. It's exciting. It's awesome. But I would tell my guys, don't do it. Magic at the Jazz. This is a ho-hum game right here. The Magic, again, kind of like OKC. I thought they'd be better. I thought they had a little bit more. Tough schedule, possibly. But they're off to not a great start, in my opinion. The Jazz, going to be a long year in Utah. Put the U in Utah for long year. It's going to be you, Utah, that's having that long year. Raptors at 76ers. Pretty good game. Pretty good game. I like what the Sixers are doing without Harden. They seem to be like, wow, you know, the bird's out of the cage. Let's go. We can go now. And it seems like they've gotten it past them, and now they're playing at a very, very good clip at a good high level. And we'll see how long they can sustain, because losing those two players and not replacing them with immediate players is going to take its toll. So you must have thought that the guys you have in your program right now are capable, like Maxey and Embiid. But you lose James Harden and P.J. Tucker, both who are logging significant minutes for you. You got to make that up somehow. I don't know how they think they're going to do it, but they got a new coach, and they're off to a pretty good start from what I see. I think most of the season sees them looking up at the Celtics, though. I just don't think that they have as good a team as the Celtics do. And I think the Celtics, if they stay injury-free, might have the best 4 in the NBA when you look at those 4. If you go and you look at Denver Nuggets and say, okay, their 4 is good, but then their 5, 6, 7, and 8 is where they're going to catch the Celtics, I could agree with you on that. But right now, the Celtics with their top 4, and this is Brad Stevens in the offseason doing some really, really good stuff. It's pretty good. Pretty good look for them right now. People in Boston should be excited. And then the last game is the Pistons and the Pelicans. And the one thing that I'm excited about is Zion Williamson's been healthy. He's been playing, and he is a terror. When he gets going, he is a load. It's like wrestling almost with him. He's so big, so physical. If you don't put a body on him, he's going to dunk it. And if you don't get around and really, really get on his left hand, he's going to murder you. He's really playing at a high level. He's so physically talented. The weight has always been an issue with him, and it creates problems for his lower extremities. I hope he can make it through. But we're talking about cracks in your feet, talking about broken bones and stuff because of all the pounding and everything that comes with it. And so when you're an NBA player, you want to be in really, really good condition, really good shape, have your body ready to work for you, because everything's about those lower extremities as you get older and you age. Okay, we got a few minutes left with the show, Pete, and I wanted to, because I had some questions about some of the other stuff. You know, we talk about basketball and stuff like this, but then also to talk about just a little bit of a brief segment here for young coaches that are coming up in the game right now. Okay, and I've been in this business a long time. Things change, things morph, and things move. And you have to change, morph, and move with them, or you become a dinosaur very, very quickly. The challenge for young coaches is not to move off of what you would consider to be your core principles. And so as these young players become, I don't say they're more difficult to deal with, but on an emotional level, they might be.
They're not as capable of dealing with issues.
On an emotional level, it
Right.
seems like these young, especially the young players that come into the league, there's so many fights now, so much pushing and grinding, and that's just a lack of professionalism. If you want it to be MMA, you can go do that. Shaquille O'Neal could throw a lot. They'd have to have a closed cage match for him because he could just pick you up and throw you right out of the ring. But they could all do other things athletically. They're all great athletes. But the fighting, the pushing, all the other stuff, it's you're going to wind up getting policed in a way that you don't like it if some of this stuff keeps happening. And that's what I say to the young coaches is that what you stress with your team is what they'll reflect. And so you have to constantly reflect gamesmanship, sportsmanship, and those things with your players. And also, you have to reflect them as well. And so you can't, one of the things that Bobby Knight did in Indiana was made basketball, famous in Indiana. It also made a lot of young coaches think that they were Bobby Knight. And they went off the same way that he went off a lot of different times, and you're not Bobby Knight. And so it created that model for coaches. I think that was a bit deleterious for some people because a lot of coaches just follow. We talked about it. Bobby Knight had a motion offense. For years, everybody ran motion offense. Everybody was running his offense because he was a great coach. But when we talk about the program that you're running, make no mistake about it, it's a direct reflection on you. It's a direct reflection upon your family as well. There used to be the thing, the hockey movie where the name on the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. It was the name on the back of the jersey is your family name. That's much more important than what's on the front of the jersey. And then one of my players, really smart guy, turns to me one time when I was giving this speech in the locker room, and he turns to me afterwards. He goes, well, what about if it says USA on the front, coach, like it did with those Olympians? And I said, then the name on the front and the back are the same.
Right.
Because we're family. And so the name on the back of the jersey, we'd be so much better in athletics right now if we reflected that. You're reflecting upon your own family. Do it well. Do it to the best of your ability. But reflect on them well because your actions are now reflecting upon to other people who didn't have anything to do with that. All right. Close with this. The most important thing for young coaches is to develop practice plans. Even me, as a coach, after 40 plus years in this business, I never ever walk into the gym to have practice without paper in my hand, without a practice plan in my hand that takes me from 4 o'clock all the way to 6 o'clock, takes me from 8 o'clock all the way to 10 o'clock. Wherever the practice is, the time of that, I have a plan for that. I'm going to give you the plan that I follow right now. All of you young coaches, get out a pen, get out a piece of paper, because this is one of the most valuable things that I learned in my entire time here. Okay? Tim Culhane was the coach at Merchant Marine Academy, and we had a model that we filled in every single day. I'm going to give you the 5 pieces of the model, and you fill them in any way you want. First piece of the model, step 1 is warm up. How do you warm up your team? How do you get them ready for practice? You got to warm them up. You just can't jump into high-impact stuff without warming them up, without getting them ready. So the first 20 minutes of your practice is in warm-up, getting your team physically ready to now compete. And then you break it into 4 other different segments. Put those other 4 anywhere you want, but warm-up always has to go into the first slot. Second slot, for me, a lot of times, especially if we've had a good warm-up, is individual offense.
Yep.
We're going to work on a player individually to get him to be a good offensive player. Second thing we're going to do is then, right then, if we're staying with the offensive theme, we're going to go to team offense. Each one of these blocks is 20 minutes. Okay? So we're going to go warm-up, individual offense, individual team offense. Now the next block is individual defense. All of the stuff we like to do on defense. And again, if anybody wants to, contact me off this and we'll get it going. Then we go into team defense, and then we have what's called specials, which at the end could be out of bounds plays, all that other stuff. Timmy Culhane gave me that model. Follow it, and I think you'll do really, really well. How much time do we got, Pete?
I would say about 2 or 3 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so let's just build out the model for 1 second for these young coaches, okay? So Tim Culhane was my coach. I was assistant coach, and he called me every single day, and he would say, write out the practice plan. And I would write out the practice plan as soon as I got in the office. He wasn't in the office with me physically. He would call me from his office, and he would go over the practice plan. He would say, okay, tell me what you have down on your practice plan. And I would show it to him. I could even fax it to him at the time. And he would say, okay, I'm going to take all of this and change it. And he said, this is how we're going to go. And this is where we went into this whole thing of, okay, now we follow the model, warm up, individual offense. What's individual offense about? Trying to make your players better shooters, better handlers of the basketball. Team offense, that's learning, and this is something I'm going to start doing videos on this over the summer, because there are great basketball players in the game right now, but there are very few basketball players who know how to play basketball. They're talented. They can do so many things with the basketball, but what they do without the basketball is deleterious to their team. They just don't know how to play outside of, I have the ball.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about that in some videos. But again, we'll talk about that even more later on. But again, you follow right into it with your defense. You have to spend equal amounts of time in your practice on offense and defense. Most coaches are going to spend more time on offense than they are on defense. You need to spend equal amounts of time doing that. Okay? So when we come back next week, I'm going to break out, because I'm going to put this up on TikTok or YouTube or something like that. I've got some shooting tips for all the great players out there today. We're going to talk about golf and basketball combined. Tune in next week, especially if you're a really, really good player, because what the tip I'm going to give you isn't really like CYO level tip. This is a tip that's going to possibly change the way you shoot the ball dramatically. And it's going to have to take a more of an advanced player to kind of understand what we're talking about. We're in the zone. We bring it to you all the time. We're bringing you hoops, nothing but hoops. We love it. We're in the zone. We'll catch you next week, and the college hoop season will be upon us. Thanks, Pete. We'll see you next week.